The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Tuesdays here at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and you can hear us as always along the Hail Varsity Radio Network and check in with us on the stream options, Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe there, Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. You can fire off an email as well, Chris at hailvarsity.com. We'll get into some of the stream comments and our starting five shout-outs. You want to get shouted out, be in the top five, and we'll mention you. But we also get down the road, so to speak, with folks that have been great about jumping in the stream. 489-1240, 489-1240 to dial up. 800-825-5865. Good show for you today. Mitch Sherman with us from The Athletic. Mitch will join us at 425. Michael Bruntz from Husker 24/7 Sports at 505. And then we are excited, man. Rick Pizzo with us from the Big Ten Network. Mr. Rick going to join us around 5:25. We'll hear from Mr. Tony, Coach White with the media today, and also some Dylan Raiola. As a lot's been made of this disguise that Illinois is so good at on their back end. KG is in with a comment in the stream as we get going here. When I got married for the fourth time, I want to wear a shirt like Elijah's. I will let my future ex-wife know that I can party, but will take her to court too. Tuesday nights are bowling night for young Elijah. And good on him.
Yeah, we're in first place in the league right now.
Right.
It should be noted our opposition did not show up last week, so we took all of the points.
Did you threaten them?
No. Apparently
do you have a big John Goodman look-alike guy on your bowling team that goes jawbeard and firearm to frighten the other team?
I think I'm probably the closest.
You?
But okay. I'm not even close. So
no.
No. It was a little bit of right knee soreness. Came into the night questionable, and the doctor decided to keep him out, keep him fresh for next week.
Sure.
We had no opposition last week. They do get a chance to make that up in some point in time, but we have all of the points from last week, and that has catapulted us into first place in the league. So another big one tonight against one of my favorite teams to go up against. They are also sponsored, their team, and I will not bring up their team name because they do not advertise with us. But
not yet.
Well, it is a golf course that Schmidt likes to go golf at. So,
okay, nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
So they sponsor a team in our league, and we're up against them tonight, so we got to go take them down.
Well, you do that, and then get me some relief on green fees.
I'll see what I can do.
Please, por favor. So we'll get our starting five shout-outs. How you feeling about Illinois? It's Illinois week. The line is fluctuated between 10.5 to 9.5 to 8. Right now is what it's at. Could jump up a point or so, but you know, in the incremental process of Nebraska football, a lot is talked about when it comes to learning how to win. More importantly, to some, is a free Saturday and learning how to smoke in the rain. I have offered a lifeline to Elijah, my smoker, and all he needs to bring is this sauce you're talking about, you're telling me about, and away we go. Covered patio, TV set up. If it washes out golf for Saturday, so be it. Bring on the pork. Bring on the ribs. I'm offering the smoker and shelter for you to watch college football all day Saturday.
Well, what we got rocking with here, and I need to find a way to use this. I've told the story of my...
You've smuggled items in from Canada. Can we say that?
No. Well, I've told the story of all the dog sitting I've been doing recently. I was paid in part with some authentic Canadian maple syrup smuggled across the border. That maple syrup...
It wasn't cleared through customs.
I didn't ask too many questions, okay? Because I open up and I go,
what
that's
else
incredible.
Was brought?
We'll stick with the maple syrup for now. Okay, authentic Canadian maple syrup aged in bourbon barrels.
Yeah,
so it is
this
maple
Elijah's
bourbon.
house.
Yeah, I'm gonna have the feds knocking.
Why
soon.
all the German shepherds?
Tiger Shark Diver says he is an FBI agent. Be careful. You don't know my address, luckily. Hopefully nobody.
But we can fix that, Tiger Shark.
You better not. Long story short, maple syrup aged in bourbon barrels. I'm trying to find the right smoked meat to put it with. Is it ribs? Is it a pork butt? I also think maybe a smoked chicken, a maple bourbon chicken could be fantastic.
I don't think you put syrup on chicken. Well, chicken and waffles.
Yeah. See?
Fair.
It could, and especially once it kind of tacks up and caramelizes a little bit on a chicken.
I think you go ribs, dude. I mean, people do brown sugar on their ribs all the time.
See, that's why I was thinking potentially pork butt, though. Because pork butt, a little bit more cost effective.
I think we just do both. Let me get the ribs.
That could be a deal.
Now, here's the problem. I haven't turned my smoker on in a year.
See, and my problem is my smoker is not on concrete. It's not covered and it's not located on top of concrete.
Well, take your suggestions.
So with a rainy Saturday, that makes an issue.
In the stream.
The other Elijah says pork belly burnt ends.
Yeah, that'd be all right. Let's get our starting 5 shout-outs. We'll dive a little further into football and get to some of your comments as well. Uncle Jimmy says hello to the nephews, Crazy Spider, A-Dub, and Elijah's Soup Strainer. So we have a little clarity on the Elijah Soup Strainer handle. And you Grandpa is in. Arlo is here. Mr. Erickson checks in. And here comes Vic from Denver. Vic says, oh, my God, actually made the top 5. Coach Brandon is here. We'll just say Little Red's chubby little brother is also in. Thank you, sir, for that handle.
I will say one of the words in there, which we will not say on the air. It's not a bad. It's the German word for snake. So you can do your own research if you want to.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we need a vocabulary segment.
I took German for 2 years, and our animals lesson, man, it had me cracking up.
All right, Jack is here. Black Hills Brennan, good to have you. Says Tuesday, Grateful Red is already in 4-0. Casey Thompson, Jeff Sims, Chubba Purdy, Logan Smothers, they are combined 7-13 for 61 yards so far this year, says Anonymous. Real Matthew is here. Sexy Grinch, formerly known as Crew. Sal, good to have you. From Omaha, Uncle Larry, good to check in with you, partner. We've heard from KG. Tuck is here. Says, I just watched the Colorado media giving it to Prime. He's wearing out his welcome in Boulder, possibly. NASCAR Eric is here. Eric, good to have you. Great Red Shark is here. Cattle and Corn, Farmers versus the Pig Farmer on Friday. Can't freaking wait. The other Dave is in. Anthony checks in. And Walter in on Brett Bielema. Brett's a nice enough guy. We haven't talked to him in a billion years, but when we did get to sit down with him, was fun. He's a fun chat. Jim is here. Good to have you, Jim. Ronnie also checks in. Colin is here. And everyone's jacked up about Friday, and I totally get it. It is going to be a ball game. And this, I think, the more I look at this, Elijah, and we'll hear from Tony White in a moment, the more I look at this, the more I am bound and determined that this is that next step for Nebraska football under Matt Rhule. And he has said all the right things, but more importantly, from a culture and depth and roster and recruiting, I mean, you look at all these things that Nebraska's improved on under a short time. They're off to an unbeaten start. They should be, but they are. It's not always been a guarantee. Now it's how do you handle a close ball game? Because I think Friday is going to be a really close ball game. It's going to be back and forth. I don't know where I'm at right now, if this thing, and what's the over-under? Is it around 46, 48? Does that sound right?
That might be a question for our betting insider, Danny Burke, on Thursday.
Yeah, let me pull that up, just the over-unders to be exactly. It's 42.5. Okay, 42.5 minus 8 right now. It's plus 260 money line for Illinois. So I think that Nebraska will have their moments where they bow up and they're good against the run. I think a lot of us are expecting Nebraska to be as bulletproof against the run. Maybe that got shaken a little bit based on what Northern Iowa did. And you figure, okay, Illinois is going to have as good or better of an offensive line. They're going to have as good or better as a quarterback, and they're going to have a better running back despite the 1-2 punch. So is Nebraska going to be good against Illinois' run game? And then the mobile quarterback part with Altmaier. That guy hasn't rushed for 100, but he's rushed for about 75, and he can keep things alive, and just the extra ball carrier element, and then the guys from the outside are something to think about with Bryant and Franklin. So, and then Bielema is going to want to hit a shock play that first drive, man. It's going to be some sort of bootleg roll, tight end is wide open for a gain of 20. That's what he's done in wins against Nebraska, and he's 3-2. Illinois, really honestly 3-2 against Nebraska their last 5. Nebraska finally snapped that. Nebraska has Illinois' attention clearly, and they got that a year ago, where Illinois probably overlooked Nebraska a little bit, and Matt Rhule had Nebraska ready to be as physical or more physical, and the defense was incredible. How's Nebraska going to run the ball Friday night without, maybe they have Harburg inserted to run the football? I don't know. But the running back run game is going to be so key, and what's the weather look like, and what can Dillon do? Can he get time, and can he carve up a defense that's supposed to be able to confuse him?
The big place where I see like flashing neon sign advantage Illinois is turnovers. They've been so good there to start the season, both taking care of the football and generating takeaways defensively. That's why I look at the weather potentially playing a factor. I'm not willing to lock in a prediction until I have a certain idea.
Friday to do that.
I know, but like until I see a more certain prediction of what the weather looks like Friday night, if it's a rainy, wet night at Memorial Stadium, I think that's advantage Illinois with how well they take the football away defensively, and they're balanced with it. They get picks and they force fumbles, and they take care of the football offensively. It's a Brett Bielema football team in that way. And if there's concerns with Nebraska's ability to hold on to the football because it's wet outside, or Dylan Riola being able to accurately deliver because the football's wet, oh man, my concerns ramp up significantly, because everywhere else, I think Nebraska at least is a wash, if not has an advantage on what Illinois presents on the other side of the football. If you follow what I'm saying there. Like offensively, I think Nebraska's offensive line is at least a wash with Illinois' defensive line. I think your wide receivers can probably be a wash with the defensive backroom of Illinois. I mean, flip it around. I think Nebraska's rushing defense had an off day last week, but I think they have an advantage on what Illinois does running the football. And Nebraska's secondary, I've been pleasantly surprised with this season, just picking up where they left off. I think they'll have an advantage when Illinois tries to throw the football. But if Illinois can generate a couple of takeaways, give their offense a couple of short fields, make this a close field goal ball game, oh man, my concerns get ramped up from probably, I'm sitting at like a 4 right now, probably up to like an 8 or a 9. That's what Illinois does really well. That's how they beat Kansas. If they can do that again against Nebraska, if that's their formula, get takeaways, get a couple extra possessions, set up their offense with short fields, which I haven't seen enough from Nebraska to think the turnovers are not a concern. I think it's better this year. I don't think it's not a concern. That's where my concerns really start to get ramped up.
No, is taking care of the football. It's kicking game. Illinois has got 2 good kickers, right? And is it going to be one of those situations where the Illini stay on the field, Nebraska can't get off the field, and they drive down and they bust one from 40, and the kick is up, is good. Now, Nebraska can put that all at ease. The other thing, too, is from an energy and intensity standpoint, that's been circled and pointed out by Nebraska, by Matt Rhule, about being ready to go. You're going to have your emotional leader in Jamari Butler back. You're going to have a crowd ready to party and celebrate 400 consecutive sellouts, an ongoing streak. and that is something that the fans are going to love. It's going to be kind of a new deal. It's a Friday deal at Memorial Stadium that is something you're going to have to get used to in the Big Ten, but it could lead into a great weekend for you. I mean, you go put the old red face paint on, party into Friday's kickoff at 7 on Fox, big stage, standalone moment for Nebraska again, a second time this season, and you have a real chance to keep this momentum. We talk about it all the time. Momentum's so key. You don't want to do what you've done already and then start out conference play 0-1 and then have to go on the road. Things have progressed perfectly for Nebraska right now. Go beat a ranked squad, kind of a signature moment, your first ranked win as Nebraska's head coach. That is out there, but more importantly, you're 1-0 in this new Big Ten era in the conference race against a really tough football team, and it continues to further that confidence before you go on the road where, let's be honest, 11 o'clock kick, you're going to have to bring your own juice. You're supposed to do that last week, and it wasn't necessarily that cup wasn't as full as it needed to be, juice-wise. So we'll check in with Mitch Sherman. He's on the way from The Athletic. Rick Pizzo next hour, Michael Bruntz. Hail Varsity with you on a Tuesday, powered by Cornhead Lager.
It's that time.
Psst. Hey, Mitch. Mitchie. We're looking for you, pal.
Mitch Sherman from The Athletic, talking Big Red.
Unleash the fury, Mitch.
Unleash the fury!
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Jeff Snitley in the stream, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Tim is in. We have Mitch Sherman with us from The Athletic, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Catch his pod, and so many of you are, Locked on Nebraska daily with Mitch. It's just awesome stuff. And Mitch, good to spend some time. Are you ready for Friday, man?
Not yet, but I will be. Let's say, give me 48 hours.
Okay, you're just going to ease into it, and then away we go.
Well, Mitch, have you come around on the concept of Friday night football as a whole? Because it's weird, but like as we get closer, I go, man, it's kind of nice to have all day on Saturday to watch other football games. Like Nebraska gets it out of the way early in the weekend. It's kind of nice.
I really have no problem with it. I mean, I'm disappointed for all the high school teams that have to reschedule their games on Thursday, and some, I think, in my jobs or jobs like mine have, decided that this is the end all. This is it. It's coming to an end. We've now crossed the line, as if enough stuff hasn't already happened in college sports that's just totally out of whack. But when they go to Fridays, man, that's the backbreaker. I don't really see it that way. I mean, college football has been moving off of Saturdays and getting into other slots that create TV revenue for several years, and Nebraska's played some Friday games. I mean, would I prefer that they not be at Memorial Stadium? I would. I think it's kind of a sacred ground in college football, and if Nebraska's got to do it, then I definitely think that Michigan and Ohio State should have to do it. And I think in time they will. Right now they seem to be dictating terms, and they'll probably be the last to give way. But ultimately, this is the direction that the sport's headed. Like, whatever makes more money is what they're going to do, because they've got to pay the players. They've got to create an environment that makes the fans want to continue to go to the games. They've got to do things to draw large TV audiences so the networks can sell ad money. I mean, this is a vicious cycle, and we're just a part of it this week in Lincoln.
Mitch Sherman with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Mitch with The Athletic. And Mitch, I'm interested to get this answer from you. The 400th consecutive sellout Friday night, going to be incredible when you think about that. What was your first Husker game?
The first one that I remember is the 1988 Oklahoma State game with Barry Sanders and Ken Clark in a duel. They both went over 200 yards. I think Clark had over 250. Sanders won the Heisman that year. I think that I attended some games before that. but I don't have much memory or any memory. Even like the mid to, it wouldn't have been before 83 or 84, but the one I remember, so I kind of count that as my first one. You know, I'm not like Dylan Raiola. Like, I don't remember rolling around in the end zone as a baby, but I didn't have that kind of access to the field. I did, but I definitely remember that Oklahoma State game in '88. So I kind of count that as my first, even if it wasn't. I wish I knew exactly what my first game was, but I'll go with that one.
I remember my first game at Memorial Stadium. It was 2005 Texas Tech.
Okay.
So if you remember, that was the game.
It didn't go well.
Nebraska came all the way back, and then I want to say picked off Texas Tech and then fumbled that interception and gave the game right back to Texas
Smith.
Tech.
Don't ask our friend Jay Moore about that.
Elijah, that was much better than 2004 Texas Tech, which, yeah, 2004
I remember that one.
Texas Tech was that was getting 70 hung on you. That was not a memorable one.
Nebraska could have been charged with animal cruelty that game because the old horse and Zorro, Mitch, every time they score a touchdown, the old horse would take a lap, wouldn't he?
Something like that. Fortunately for all people associated with the Nebraska program, those days are gone, and I think we all hope not coming back.
See, I remember that game because I was at my aunt's house, and there was a little bit of a watch party over there, and I had never been to a game at Memorial. Next year was my first year, but I remember that one because I remember everyone being like, this isn't what usually happens. This isn't Husker football.
Party broke up in the second quarter.
Yeah.
It was time to run to Mom's. That's what I was doing. Mitch, when we talk Illinois, Nebraska, how do you envision this thing going Friday night? We don't know what the weather's going to be, but with Nebraska, where do you think it could get a little scary for Nebraska?
If Nebraska can't do multiple things on the offensive side, I have a pretty good sense, I think, of what this defense is going to get done, and I think Illinois and Luke Altmaier, he's a good quarterback. Dual threat. He's going to find a way to probably put some points on the board. I don't think they're going to run wild and score 30 or anything like that. But Illinois has a good enough defense where if they can get a few things going offensively, and they've been very opportunistic in the turnover game. It's not going to. There's not like a wild scenario to believe that Illinois could win this game, and I do think it's going to be a competitive 4-quarter game. For me, the key, the wild card with Nebraska and the unknown is, can they do both things on the offensive side? And if they can, then I feel good about Nebraska's chances. If they can get Dante Dowdell going, and I think it's beneficial for Nebraska. It's a good sign that he only had to carry it 6 times last week against Northern Iowa. This is a game where I think you can give it to him 20 times, and I think that would be beneficial for Nebraska if he can get it 20 times and get 100 yards or north of that. And they can mix in Emmett Johnson and Ramir Johnson and throw the ball to those guys. But I'd like to see some of the vertical passing game get going too. It hasn't been completely on track. Yeah, there have been moments, and we've seen Dylan throw some good deep balls, but it's been more busted coverages, and Nair had the great touchdown catch in week 1. Banks had a good touchdown catch in week 1. But last couple weeks, the vertical threat has been, it's not been what I think a lot of people expect. And that's not a knock on the QB. I think it's more about getting those guys open. And some of it goes back on Dylan on looking and pushing the envelope a little bit. So that to me is one of the keys for Nebraska to be able to run the ball, is to develop something vertically. And if you take Illinois has to take a defender out of the box because Nebraska's hitting shots over the middle, then things start to roll, and I think Nebraska could have a good day offensively.
Mitch, what concerns me is Dylan Raiola has shown through 3 games the ability to pick apart zone coverages, especially short to intermediate routes. It's been man coverage when he's been going deep, and he hasn't had as much success there. Illinois, though, they've shown it in the past couple of years. They love running man coverage. They love putting their guys on islands. I know Satterfield talked today about they're using a little bit more zone coverage this year on that back end, but what do you make of Nebraska's ability to go out and beat man coverage if that's the task on Friday?
Well, they're going to disguise it, and they run some quarters. A lot of teams in the Big Ten do. I don't think it's going to be all man coverage. It's going to be a mix, and the key for Dylan, for me, is going to be diagnosing that. And Satterfield talked, and Dylan, they both talked about the importance of how they're going to diagnose it. That you can't really do it pre-snap. They're going to have to snap the ball and then diagnose the defense when the play starts moving, and that's just a more difficult task for a freshman quarterback. But there have been so many times this year where, in talking about Dylan Raiola, and it's only 3 games, and it's not 3 great defenses, but it's a good start, and you can only judge it off of the competition that you've seen. Everything he's done has looked like what you would expect from a more experienced guy. They've thrown around things like he's a young pro, he plays like a pro, he's going to make the NFL kind of decision. So if he can stick to that path, then I think he has the ability to diagnose these more complex defenses and make some post-snap reads. And if he can do that, then, whether it's man coverage or zone coverage, Nebraska has the receivers to be able to beat man coverage. If Illinois throws out some all-conference or all-American corners, or some team down the road does, then it becomes a more difficult task. But I don't know that that's what they're dealing with. Good defensive backs, but I think Nebraska would like to see some situations where Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair and Jalen Lloyd and Ja'Cory Barney and Carter Nelson get matched against man coverage, because I think they feel like they have the athletes that they didn't last year to beat that at times.
Mitch Sherman's with us from The Athletic, Hail Varsity Radio, and the Locked On podcast with Mitch Sherman, at Mitch Sherman on Twitter. Mitch, as we wind down, when we look at Nebraska and the opportunity, we go back to the Colorado game and that big moment. Do you think the team's ready to go win a close ball game? They didn't have to win a close game against Colorado. Feels like it might be a one-score deal Friday night.
I think they can. I mean, I think that they have the ability to do it, and we'll see if they have the psychology to do it. That's been a question with this program, and there's not really any way to answer that until you've been in the situation and you've seen how the team responds. Like, they've responded well to all the situations that have been thrown at them this year, but that's one that they've not faced, and they've not had stress or much stress in the second half of any game. So sometimes you see like a team in a different sport that's in this situation, like a basketball team that plays early in the year and their games are over at halftime, and then they get into one that goes deep into a game, and they're not the best version of themselves when it comes down to the end, and maybe they lose a game that they should win. And so it's up to Nebraska to try to create those kind of situations in practice. It's one thing to lose a game like that in basketball. It's another in football, since there's so many fewer games on the schedule. So I asked Matt Rhule about that on Monday, and he talked about what they do on Thursdays in practice with situations, and he believes that this team has cleared that hurdle, that they are no longer of a mindset where they think that things are going to go wrong when they get into a tight situation. But we'll see. I agree with him. I think that they're positioned to have success in close moments. I think they've got the quarterback to do it. I think they have the defense to do it. But until they do it, we're probably still going to be wondering.
Mitch, we'll check in with you on Friday. See you in the press box, and always appreciate the insight, man.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks for having me on.
There he is, Mitch Sherman with us from The Athletic. At Mitch Sherman, follow on Twitter and check out his pod, the Locked On Nebraska pod. We'll get to some of your comments coming up here in the stream from a point total standpoint. We'll hear from Tony White as well. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? When I point at you, yeah.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. Positive Mike checks in when it comes to what to do for the ribs or pork butt. And Positive Mike says this for the Saturday Smoke Fest. A day of college football, rain or shine. Brown sugar, spicy honey, and butter.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
That's good. But we have authentic smuggled Canadian syrup.
Maple syrup.
Maple.
Aged in bourbon barrels.
Aged in bourbon barrels.
It's the best of both worlds. You like maple bourbon flavor? Me too. It tastes it's perfect.
Okay.
We got to find a way to use it.
I
like the idea of bringing a little bit of heat to it.
Okay. A little heat. That works.
A little bit. We could kind of boil that sauce down with some red pepper flakes.
I've just got to make sure the old warhorse, the old smoker, is still active. Tried to smoke before the Michigan-Nebraska game in 2018. Mm-hmm. Said no.
Well, I know mine's still working fine. I use my smoker at my fantasy football draft. So if we get any reprieve from the rain
on
Saturday,
gotcha.
It's a strong possibility. Or I could just put maybe some like plywood down so it's not a muddy mess in my backyard. I've sent you the video. I think I've turned my backyard into a bit of a
catch-all,
a chipping green. I've been working on my short game in the backyard. Not been good for the lawn. Not at all. Golden
Fang is here. Matthew is here. Guevon says, "What's up, guys?" DJ. Says, sounds like Schmidt wants to cook while you watch football. Elijah, take the offer. Jeff is in late, but it's all good.
I think the other way around. I think Schmitty wants me to smoke up meats for him at his house while he watches football.
No, it's idiot-proof. You just turn it on and
and I got
pour a whiskey.
I got the internal meat probe too, so it tells you when to pull it out. So it's at the internal temperature. You're done.
So Mr. Snitley brings us back to football. Thank you, Jeff. Part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Says Illinois quarterback Altmaier's arm and athleticism scares me, but he's been sacked 5 times already, and they haven't faced the D-line like the black shirts. Stopped the run and turned death row loose. Did see a tweet from Coach Pot Roast earlier, speaking of meat, and there was a grin. Maybe it's recruiting related. Maybe it's just a precursor.
Well, I know there's been some talk in the chat here of taking the overs in the game on Friday night. I'm more inclined to believe, especially considering the weather forecast, but even if it stays dry, that this is a low-scoring defensive battle.
It's 24-21 deal.
Are you thinking first to 21 too? Because that's kind of how I'm thinking.
I think if Tony White and this defense keep doing what they've done, and let's be straight, Nebraska's defense has not been the problem at all. There's not been any games that Nebraska's defense has not been able to go out there and keep them in any ball game. Now you factor in a competent offense that's been complimentary, that has some talent, has some skill, has some big playability. And it should go okay for you with the home field advantage Friday night.
And I know people have concerns about Nebraska against a big running back because of what Northern Iowa did. I saw enough through last year and through this year to think that that's a one-game sample size that maybe not throw out, but it's an outlier. Nebraska's defensive performance, regardless of the opponent, has been enough to give their offense a chance.
It needs to be an outlier. You need to bounce back from 180 yards after contact. So I'll say this. Colorado, 36 points, 23 of those off turnovers a year ago in Boulder. And then Michigan did Michigan things, 45 points. Those are the only 2 teams that have busted 20 on you.
Mm-hmm.
So is Illinois' offense good enough to hit a big play or 2? Maybe. Do they get held to 3? Is it a house call with their 2 wideouts or the running game?
My take on it is Illinois' defense good enough to go punch it in, get some points if they get the ball around midfield?
The short field,
short
for sure.
field, yes. Is it good enough to go pick up 7 first downs consecutively against Nebraska's defense and drive the length of the drive? I don't think so. I think eventually Nebraska's defense will bow up. I mean, what did we always say about Bo Pelini's defenses at Nebraska? What their best strength was, they were bend but don't break. Nebraska was bend but don't break on Saturday. I think if you're bend but don't break against Illinois, you put yourself in a really, really good chance to win. Because that would mean Illinois has to drive the length of the field on you, which means your offense isn't screwing up. So I like Nebraska's chances if it's a bend but don't break type performance from the defense.
Let's sneak in. I think 42 Weston is the over-under. He says take the under. That's what he's wondering. That's where I'm leaning, but we'll have our predictions with Claus on Friday. Thursday, Friday, back-to-back for you at the Single Barrel. Thursday, 4 to 6. Friday, 4 to 6. 9th and P. So we get you ready for football eve on Thursday and then football on Friday. Tony White earlier touched on Altmaier and the Illini offense. Cut 5. What's he think of what's coming to Lincoln Friday night?
Yeah, I mean, you got the playmakers on the outside, right? So those guys are going up and getting footballs. You see they do a great job of keeping it balanced when they know when they want to run the ball, what looks they're running the ball into, and then doing a lot of different things. I mean, RPOs are getting him out, movement pass-wise. I mean, he's playing with a guy. He's playing with a lot of confidence right now. And he's not really panicked. He kind of goes out there and he sees and he's operating at a high level. So he'll be a challenge to deal with.
So Scott says, "Relax, boys. Illinois is not the '92 Cowboys."
Brian kind of says same thing. Not Georgia or Alabama on offense.
It's a new world, fellas, where Nebraska's 3-0.
I think
they're favored in a ranked matchup.
Illinois' offense is good enough to go beat you if your offense is screwing up and giving short fields, or if your special teams is screwing up. Like, I think they're good enough to beat you there. But if it's a mono, would you rather have Illinois' offense to go drive the length of the field or Nebraska's offense to go drive the length of the field? I'm going to take Nebraska's offense.
Well,
I'm going to take the quarterback.
I'm going to take that quarterback for sure. Matt says, I think the Black Shirts will be motivated this week, GBR. So let's go to more from Mr. Tony. Cut 2. Did Northern Iowa catch you off guard at all?
You know, usually you come out with scripts, so it looks like they had a script in there. The biggest thing was the tackling. You know, I mean, there's so many yards after contact, and you know where you're getting them into 2nd and 7 and 2nd and 8. Now they're in 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4, which leads to 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. You know what I mean? So when you go back and look at the tape, you see us making contact or stopping the ball carriers, around the line of scrimmage a lot, for a yard, 0 gain, 1 or 2 yards. But then they're just bleeding you, falling forward. We're overrunning the ball, and now a run that goes for 1 yard is now going for 4 and 5. You know what I mean? So. Again, great things to not great at the time, but great things to know how to what to improve on and approach from here on out.
Might have a little air of redemption Friday night for the defense. They weren't happy. Coaches weren't happy. The standard that's constantly talked about, and that will be for sure a motivating factor for Nebraska. We'll get to some of your emails. Pat checks into the stream as well. Brent is in as well. And, it's going to come down to that fundamental football that's so boring to talk about, but so crucial in games like this. Not only conference openers. Think about Nebraska a year ago. They won 20-7. They had a mobile quarterback. Harburg really did a hell of a job. They hit some big plays. Despite all that, Nebraska turned the ball over a lot in the second half and still closed it out. Will it be better Friday? We'll wind down hour 1 with Hail Varsity.
And now,
back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, winding down hour 1. It's Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. So, reminder, Thursday, 4 to 6, your football eve, your football weekend, single barrel, 9th and P inside the Graduate. Friday, getting you hooked up before kickoff, 4 to 6, single barrel Friday with Hail Varsity. Is excited to be there for road shows this week. We'll get back up to Gretna sooner rather than later. The Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, that's awesome. And then next week on the road at Ameristar, Friday before Nebraska-Purdue. Want to remind you about your friends at Neiman & Sons, and we're talking family-owned and just great in the community. Neiman & Sons, established in 1981, a family-run company specializing in roofing, siding, gutters, and a strong commitment to customer satisfaction. Of course, the family has been so great in the community over the years. Think of youth football, and Trevor and Travis and company, man, they are great at giving back. They're dedicated to improving the community. They're trusted professionals. They're fully licensed. They're accredited. Neiman & Sons, they've built a solid reputation through quality service and customer trust. And what do you need when it comes to service? They have comprehensive services. Neiman & Sons do a range of residential and commercial exterior services. That's roofing, siding, gutters, and custom lighting, exterior lighting. So if you've got a hankering for that holiday season with exterior lighting, Neiman & Sons, give them a shout. If you need that commercial or residential roof fixed, changed, siding, I mean, it's all there for you with Neiman & Sons. Phone number with Neiman & Sons is 402-423-4853, 402-423-4853. Log on today. Find out more with Neiman & Sons, neimanandsons.com. So, Win Nuke 2003 checks in his first game. We asked Mitch that question. He thinks that the first kind of dent or game that he remembers. We talked with Mitch Sherman, podcast, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play to catch the pod of Mitch Sherman with us. He said the 88 Oklahoma State-Nebraska game, the Barry Sanders game, that was memorable for me. I think mine was Arizona State or UCLA 87. I think 87 Arizona State for me. We'll ask Michael Bruntz coming up in 10 minutes. Rick Pizzo with us from the Big Ten Network. A return of Rick in hour 2. That's all good. Tiger Shark says we can't beat Illinois. If we can't beat Illinois, it'll be rough road ahead. That's fair. I mean, these are the ones you want to get at home for sure. But I think Nebraska's got enough people to go to. And pretty good article, too, today, Elijah. We'll get more into tomorrow. But when it comes to quarterback tiers, not tears in your beer, but the different tiers of quarterback, Nebraska's in a pretty good spot, comparatively speaking, with the rest of the Big Ten, already with a freshman.
The rest of the country, let's be honest.
Sure.
The rest of the country.
I'm starting with, Big Ten, but you can go ahead and jump in and say the rest of the country. I don't disagree with you.
I've seen a lot of junior, senior, super senior quarterbacks, DJU, make a lot of stupid mistakes to start the year that Dylan Rila hasn't made.
Yep, and it'll be key to take care of that football. Bruntzy's on the way, and Rick Pizzo, hour 2 with Hail Varsity coming up.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back into it. It's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager into hour 2. Michael Bruntz with us from Husker 24/7 Sports, at Michael Bruntz on Twitter. Elijah's going to wear orange on Sunday. I'm pretty partial to maroon. Bruntz, I know you being the Denver fan, you probably got some orange and navy in your closet, but no orange and navy this week. Can you get down?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm done with orange and navy for quite a while, based on how things have gone so far. So, I can get down with that. That's fine.
Yeah, in hindsight, looking back, I think I should have estimated that the team that had $70 million less in cap space to work with this year might not have a good year. I think maybe I should have factored that in just a little bit more in my preseason predictions for the Broncos.
Yeah, no, I mean, everything was just roses during the preseason, right? And then everybody started playing their starters, and that's where he got into some trouble. So, it's been bad. I'm kind of wondering if the Broncos can find a way to trade Sean Payton for some draft picks. I think that's where we're at now.
Well, that's enough Bronco talk for the non-Denver Denver fan in the studio.
Hey, all I'm saying is if Bo Nix isn't that guy, a Manning has saved us once before, maybe a Manning can save us again. Arch is our only hope.
That's true. It's like an annual thing, though. It's like, which quarterback are you trying to suck for? That's basically Denver's approach.
Well, there's always free agency. Just saying. Don't have a clue about who you go after, but moving forward, Bruntzy, what are you feeling here about Friday night? Short week, but should be a good ball game, 400th sellout. Do you remember your first Husker game?
I was thinking about this the other day. So I do not come from a family of Nebraskans, so I don't have deep-seated roots. I think it would have been the '92 Colorado game. It was either '92 Colorado or did they play in Lincoln in '91 against Oklahoma?
They played in. Yeah, it was 91 with Calvin Jones. The coldest game ever. Freezing rain.
That was it.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if that was 93 or 91. It would have been the 91 Oklahoma game, and then 92 Colorado would have been my first two.
Those are exquisite, my friend.
I just assume that's how it always was at those games, right? Everybody was angry as all get out like they were in 1992, right?
Yeah, right. I mean, so this whole tone and bloodlust from a couple weeks ago is this is like how it's supposed to be against Colorado.
Yeah, the good old days. Yeah, that felt comfortable to me.
Well, Illinois comes in, and they've been a bit of pain in the neck to Nebraska. Not last year. That was really kind of a wow win for Rhule and company. They went out and really just punched Illinois in the face. But for the most part, under Lovey and even Coach Brett's first game in that infamous 2021 season, Illinois has just kind of been a team that maybe Nebraska's overlooked, but certainly has felt it at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I always remember, even back when Lovie Smith was there, it always, no matter how good or bad Illinois was, like their secondary, they were coming to hit, and they were playing physical football, and that seems to have kind of carried over even now. And yeah, I mean, for whatever reason, last year not being part of that, I mean, Nebraska's really struggled, and a lot of it's been kind of the self-inflicted stuff. And at least so far this season, with this version of Nebraska football, it seems like a lot of that stuff has yet to pop up and has hopefully been coached out of the system of what Nebraska is doing. So I'm eager to kind of see how Nebraska handles a little bit of a different challenge. You had the two kind of spread open offenses the first 2 weeks. You had a little bit more of a downhill running style last week against Northern Iowa. This is going to be another test, I think, of kind of that big boy type football, but Illinois is going to have much better playmakers on the outside on offense and a quarterback that can get out and run a little bit if you're not really dialed in on the pass rush. So it's going to be a different challenge, and I think Matt Rhule has really kind of gone out of his way this week to really kind of hammer home that, look, you look across the Big Ten right now, this is a team that most closely resembles us and kind of the way we want to do things. So I would hope that has the attention of Nebraska's players going into this week.
It's Michael Bruntz with us here. And Michael, one of the things that I'm really concerned about is when you look at the defensive stats and the eye test for Illinois football, their defense is not by any means the 85 Bears. They're not going to hold you to 25 yards rushing, 25 yards passing. You're going to get yours, but where that defense makes their money is with takeaways. 6 interceptions on the year to go along with 5 forced fumbles. 3 of those are covered by the defense. That's what has really made their defense awesome this year, is their ability to take the football away. Have you seen enough from Nebraska this year to think that turnovers are not going to be an issue in this one? What's your concern there, especially considering there might be a little bit of rain in that forecast on Friday night?
Yeah, I'm kind of taking a wait-and-see approach with the turnover question in Nebraska. Obviously, they're +3 right now for the year, which feels like they finally got that boulder up the hill from where they've been the last few years. But it's going to be a little bit of a different challenge this week. The one thing that Illinois does really well, and I think has caused some issues for some of their opponents to start the season, is they're really, really good at disguising coverages. And that's going to be a different kind of test for Dylan Raiola. You're going to see a defense that is going to go in there wanting to really take the ball away, and they're going to try to take advantage of the fact that he's playing his 4th college game. I mean, it's really going to be important for him to be dialed in on preparation this week. Nobody's looking at. and kind of put things in a good spot, which he's done, I think, almost exclusively this year. I mean, I don't think there's been too many throws where you kind of say, like, that was really kind of asking for trouble. So I like his ability to kind of steady the ship. I think a real important key in this game is going to be whether or not Nebraska can get the ball, get the run game going on offense early on, because I think that kind of helps kind of lessen the load on Raiola and kind of open the playbook a little bit more for Nebraska if they can kind of stay in second and third and manageable.
Michael Bruntz with us, Husker 24/7 at Michael Bruntz on Twitter. I want to go back to Illinois' offense. We know that the Illinois offensive line is physical. We know that Fegan's another big back. You at least got a preview of that last week. But what's your take on Altmaier? He's a guy that is mobile enough, and is this going to be the story of a cagey mobile quarterback making people pull their hair out by extending plays? And I don't know, man, that running, that threat of the run just does in a lot of defenses.
It does. I mean, the quarterback run piece of it makes things a lot more difficult. I think for a team like Nebraska, too, that is so good up front and is so good at getting upfield quickly, you do kind of have to pay extra attention to a quarterback that can get out and run a little bit. You even saw it last week against Northern Iowa. I thought they did a really nice job of kind of using Nebraska's aggressiveness against them a little bit at times. I mean, you get the quarterback leaking out and extending plays, or they were able to hit a couple quick runs where, or even I think there were a couple plays they hit a draw in Nebraska where Robinson and company were upfield. I do think it probably helps Nebraska a little bit, too, in this game that they're going to have Jamari Butler back. They're going to have Mekhi Bayer for the whole game. And, I think Nebraska is going to be able to get pressure. It's just going to be a matter of whether they can get Altmaier on the ground when they have the chance. Because, I mean, you guys know how that feeling is, where even if you're getting pressure, the quarterback's getting out and extending plays. I mean, it kind of turns into backyard football, and that's where Illinois can rely on those playmakers on the outside. So it's going to be really important, I think, for Nebraska to rush with discipline. I thought they did a great job of that against Colorado, and they're going to have to be up to the task this week as well. I mean, I don't think Altmaier's a danger to just run all over Nebraska, but he can do enough with his legs to make life difficult.
Michael, what do you think the strength of this Illinois team is? Is it their offense or is it their defense?
I don't know. I mean, it's without the turnover numbers, I don't know that I would say the defense, but, I don't think you need to have exceptional numbers as a defense if you're getting turnovers. I mean, it's extra possessions here or there. It's a momentum thing. I mean, I think that's kind of what they rely on is, a stout defense that can turn you over and then an opportunistic offense. I don't know that it's necessarily one thing in my mind. It's a group that I think plays relatively good complementary football. It feels like the type of team that I think Brett Bielema would loves to have. And they don't necessarily have the top end guys on defense like they've had in the past, because they've had some pretty good individual guys, but as a group they just play really good team defense. So I would lean defense, but I don't even know that it's nearly as kind of skewed as Nebraska would be right now.
So prototypical Big Ten West is what to expect?
It feels like it. I mean, that's kind of the way I'm looking at this game. Is it feels like a Big Ten West game, but with a little bit more explosiveness in the offense. I don't think it's going to be like an Iowa-Minnesota game or Iowa-Purdue or something like we're kind of used to. But I think both of these offenses can do something with the big plays, more so than maybe probably what they've been given credit for in the past.
Michael Bruntz with us, Husker 24/7 Sports at Michael Bruntz on Twitter. Bruntzy, thought on Nebraska's offense. What do you think their go-to is right now? It's 3rd and 6. Let's call it that. Are they going to try and run the ball? Are they going to spread you out and hit someone over the middle? They go on back shoulder? What's Nebraska unstoppable. It may be too big a word right now for this offense, but what do you think you're confident they can execute routinely against this defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nebraska has the skill players on the outside to give Illinois some issues. I mean, as good as Illinois' defense has been with the turnover piece of it, I don't know that they've faced the depth of skill position players that Nebraska has. I think that's one advantage that Nebraska can have, the over-the-middle stuff with Nair. Maybe you get Thomas Fedoni involved. I mean, I think when you kind of look at what Nebraska's done offensively through these first three games, the one thing that I think has flown under the radar a little bit, I mean, you look at what Nebraska's had to pick up on third down. It's been, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5 a lot. They've been able to get a lot of work done on first down with the running game and kind of stayed on schedule. And that's going to be a big key against Illinois because, with what we've talked about and the ability to get turnovers, you want to be in 3rd and 2, not 3rd and 8. I mean, it just opens the playbook so much more. So I do think Nebraska can get some stuff done through the air. I do think, though, that if they're able to run the ball with any kind of success and regularity in this game, I think Nebraska should be able to take care of business pretty comfortably.
Michael, you talk about the things that Nebraska has that Illinois hasn't seen so far this season. If we flip that question around, I mean, we've kind of hit on a little bit of this already in the interview, but what does Illinois have that Nebraska hasn't seen that concerns you?
I mean, I think offensively, Illinois' line is a step up from what Nebraska's seen. I'm kind of eager to see if Nebraska can have the dominance with the pass rush that they've enjoyed through these three games in terms of getting pressure without having to get too exotic with their blitz looks. I think teams to this point have largely avoided testing Tommy Hill. Illinois so far this season has shown that they're more than willing to throw the ball deep. They're more than willing to, throw some 50-50 balls and let their playmakers go up and get it. So I think that's going to be a new challenge for Nebraska. They've got size on the outside that is maybe a little bit different from what Colorado had and certainly what UTEP and Northern Iowa had. So that's going to be a little bit different challenge too. But, I mean, I think it's more personnel-based, I think, and guys that kind of look a little bit different than what Nebraska's seen to this point. And I think part of that is just getting into Big Ten play, and that's kind of what they're going to see week in and week out are kind of bigger, more physical wide receivers, and Nebraska's secondary is going to have to adapt to that.
Bruntz, will get you out on this, and do you think Nebraska covers? That line's 9.5 right now.
That's a lot of points. I kind of looked at it right around like a 7 to 10 point game. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, it feels to me like one of those games that last week I think there was a little bit of a hangover with the fan base because everybody was so charged up for that Colorado game that it was going to be hard to keep that going for a second straight week. I think this is going to be a game where Nebraska's fans are going to be in it. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. I think they'll get it done. I think they will cover. I think it'll be a close game into the fourth quarter, but I mean, this is going to be a real big test of Nebraska's ability to salt games away. They've been in control late, all three games so far, but they're going to have to do it against a better defense and a better team. But I think they get it done. I mean, I like these short week games at home. I just think it really benefits the home team, especially if you can get a really raucous atmosphere.
All right, Michael Bruntz with his Husker 24/7 Sports at Michael Bruntz on Twitter. Bruntsy, we'll see you on Friday, bud.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks. Take care.
Good stuff from Bruntsy. We'll check in. What's BTN think of the Big Red? Rick Pizzo on the way with Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. We welcome in big-time friend of the show, Rick Pizzo, BTN. You catch Rick throughout college football, basketball, and, well, quite frankly, everything else on the Big Ten Network. Rick, good to spend a few minutes with you. Thanks for the time. How we doing?
Schmitty, awesome to catch up with you guys. So good, and what great timing, man. I got to be honest, I cannot wait for the Friday night conference opener for both Nebraska, Illinois. You got a pair of 3-0 teams that I think so far have been perhaps exceeding expectations in a lot of different ways. Rubber kind of meets the road on Friday night at Memorial Stadium. It's going to be an unbelievable environment.
Rick, really fast here, it took fans a little bit to come around on like the big noon kickoff, the 11 a.m. starts in college football. Are you starting to come around on Friday night football? Because I think I'm starting to come around on it.
We're in.
Yeah, I've never been a big anti-Friday night guy. You got to understand, I didn't grow up in a part of the country where Friday night football was a religion, a thing that had to happen, that it belonged only to the high schools. As soon as expansion started, all these games need to be televised. They need to have space, and at the end of the day, you need to utilize additional days. There were smaller conferences, and I'm sure you guys remember this, before ESPN had that Thursday night package, you would see smaller conference games on not just Thursdays, but you would see the MAC sometimes on Tuesdays or Wednesdays because they needed exposure. You want a game like Nebraska-Illinois to have its own standalone viewing opportunity. You don't want it to be buried with 3 other good Big Ten games that you want to watch. So in this particular case, I love it, and I think everybody better get used to it, even if they don't like it, because it's not going anywhere.
Rick, you look at all the helmet games on the slate within the Big Ten this weekend, and you do have that stage, and there's been a lot of questions about this Husker football team going into year 2, and they've kind of checked some boxes. They've handled their business a couple of times as big favorites. They beat the hated rival in Colorado on a big-time stage, dominated, but it wasn't super clean. And now you get Illinois, which was really a turnaround game for Nebraska last year. They didn't end up going bowling, but it was a kind of a wow win. What do you think so far? You mentioned exceeded expectations, but going into this year, what did you think Nebraska could be?
Well, they exceeded my expectations so far for 2 reasons. One, I thought the defense, which I was really impressed by last year, would have a tough time coming straight out of the gates and being better than it was toward the end of last year. And I know the level of competition has to be considered here. And say what you will say about Colorado as a football team, but this is a team with explosive football players. And in the first half, Nebraska allowed that offense, Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and the rest of those guys, to do basically nothing to scare them. And that was an offense that scared a lot of good defenses a year ago. I think Tony White is onto something with his scheme. They obviously have the mentality back. So that's area number 1. Area number 2 is Dylan Raiola. And I know that I am the one telling folks to pump the brakes because you guys are hearing this more than we are, right? I mean, he comes in, he gets named the starter, and people are already saying this guy's going to win a national championship. He's going to be a Heisman Trophy contender. We heard that same stuff about Graham Mertz after his first game at Wisconsin. So I'm a big pump the brakes guy, but what I've seen from him and the way that Matt Rhule and this offense is kind of revolving around him and handling what his skill set is, that's exceeded my expectations. He really hasn't made any silly mistakes, even though Matt said right off the bat, I'm not treating him with kid gloves. When he needs to win us games, he's going to have to win us games. And I'm not going to put him in a position where we run the ball 50 times in the first 3 quarters, and then I ask him to throw it. He is a quarterback, a starting quarterback at a Power 5 school. That's exactly how they've treated him. I've been really impressed by it. So far, you check those 2 boxes. Now the next thing you need, a signature win, and the opportunity for that comes Friday.
Yeah, it's a big step up in competition for what Dylan Raiola has seen this year with that Illinois defense. 9 takeaways forced on the year from that Illinois defense. But to flip it around, I know a lot of people talked preseason about Kansas, but this still feels like the biggest test for Illinois so far this season because Kansas has had a sputtering start to the season. Take me through what you think is at stake for both of these teams on Friday night.
Well, I do think it's a big step up in competition, but I will say, even though Kansas, and I know they lost the 2nd straight game, but that UNLV team, I think, by the way, is going to be pretty good. That Kansas offense is an offense that has confused a lot of people over the last couple of years. And Jalen Daniels is a really dynamic playmaker at the quarterback position. Illinois is a different team, especially defensively right now than it was last year. And the biggest reason why is the evolution and the maturity of Aaron Henry, the defensive coordinator. You remember 2 years ago, he was a position coach, and he watched a defense lead this team to its best year under Brett Bielema. And they did that by rushing a ton of guys and putting their corners and safeties on islands. They could do that because they had guys like Devin Witherspoon and Sidney Brown now playing in the NFL. They didn't have that last year, but that was a mentality that Aaron took over or when he got promoted to be DC. It burned them. Now, this year, you look at what they're doing defensively. They have a much improved secondary. Xavier Scott, one of the biggest playmakers in any defensive backfield, not just in the conference, but in the country. And still, he is not sending the house. He is giving them help. So I don't think this is a game where Dylan Raiola gets necessarily scared by a ton of blitzes. I think they try to confuse him by mixing coverages in the back end. You have a young guy. Is he looking around wondering, are they in press man and then they back off? Are they going to cover two? They'll play a ton of different defenses in the secondary this year. I think that's where this game is won and lost between Nebraska and Illinois.
Rick, Nebraska's run game. How would you grade Nebraska's run game right now? What do you think of Nebraska's balance overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really good. I think that we knew that was going to be the strength of the team heading in, right? I mean, Matt Rhule had 4 running backs listed as the starter heading into the opening game as kind of number 1, A, B, C, and D on the depth chart. I always think that's good. I don't have any issue with sharing carries, even late in the year. In this day and age of college football, running backs are going to get banged up. You're not going to do it with one guy. Nobody tries to do it anymore with one guy. Ohio State had Travion Henderson. They went out and got Quinshon Judkins, one of the best transfer running backs in the country, from Ole Miss. Everybody needs these guys. So I think it's fine. But I also think if you're asking me for a grade, Chris, it would be incomplete. Because you have to play a defense that can stuff you. You have to play a defense that can put 7 or 8 guys up there and ask this offensive line to show them how good they are. They haven't played that defense yet. They'll play that defense in Illinois. So you'll be able to grade that run game in a much more complete fashion after Friday night.
It's just a little different, Rick, because Nebraska's run game a year ago was Harburg. It was a quarterback run game. We're still anxious to see how Nebraska's running back run game can work in the Big Ten against pretty good defenses.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I do think that it's an element, right, that Nebraska had last year that they don't necessarily have this year, because you're not going to expect Dylan to take off and beat a couple of guys on his own accord. But that's okay, because that's not how this offense is built anymore. You can run screen passes as glorified runs. The tight end room is really good. You can run short tight end routes as kind of glorified runs that kind of substitute in for what would otherwise be maybe a quarterback draw or an option. I think this is a fine offensive philosophy for Nebraska to be running because of the depth that they have at running back and because of the talent that they have, specifically arm talent that they have this year at quarterback.
Rick Pizzo with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Rick, as we zoom out just a little bit, still a question about Illinois. Just want to get your thoughts on how much of a surprise their start to the season has been to you. Obviously, it was a down year for Bielema. Bielema has made a career out of not having back-to-back down seasons, and he's shown that at Illinois. How much has Illinois surprised you this year? And as a follow-up to that, what other teams in the Big Ten have had a start to the season that has exceeded your expectations?
No, this has not surprised me because I know Brett extremely well as both a coach and a person, and he is a guy who is as buttoned up, dots as many I's, crosses as many T's. He comes off sometimes as a little cavalier because he's such a good interview, because he's so casual and so friendly with everybody. I got to tell you, man, he is as dialed into every aspect of his football team as any coach in the country. He told me in the offseason and when we talked this summer that Luke Altmaier was ready to make a huge jump, that he felt like year 2 in Barry Lunney's system would make all the difference for Altmaier. And he said that he thought the wide receiving core wasn't being talked about enough. Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin are wide receiver 1A on a lot of different teams, not just Illinois. And Caden Fagan's just a bruiser in between the tackles. So this really has not surprised me, but I have been impressed by it. If I was going to give you one team outside of Illinois that has maybe exceeded, I think, everybody's expectations, it's Indiana. And I know the first 2 games are games that they're supposed to win, but the way that they went out on the coast and played and just dominated UCLA last weekend was remarkably impressive. Curt Cignetti is a guy that is going to make a lot of headlines because of the things he says and the bravado he has, but he can coach his tail off, man. I said it before the year started. I really think this Indiana team is going bowling in year one. A lot of people kind of scratch their heads. You look at that schedule, you look at all the transfers he brought in, his past success. I think there's no question. Now I think this is a team that could legitimately win 7 or 8 games, and that's something that nobody would have thought before the year started.
Rick, to the schedule point, and Coach Rhule touched on this just the other day, Nebraska's schedule goes from, favorable to, Illinois is ranked. Rutgers, likely. We'll see what they do against Virginia Tech this weekend out there in Hokie Land. But Rutgers could be ranked when they visit Nebraska. Purdue's a roadie that just, we'll see where that goes following Illinois. And then you have Indiana that could be unbeaten. So, and that's all leading up to the Ohio State. Nebraska's schedule, as you look at it now, is it a far cry different from what you thought Nebraska was going into for this 24 season?
Not really, and I hosted that press conference show, and I loved what Matt Rhule said. He said before the year started, everybody said, your schedule is easy at the beginning. You get 4 easy ones at the start. Now Illinois is ranked. So suddenly it's not easy anymore because they're a different team than they were in the preseason. That's why coaches don't listen to that crap. That's why they don't believe the rankings. They know that every game in this league inside the Big Ten is losable, and that means every game is winnable. And every coach has to sell that to his team. You got to remember now, you got to get up for 12 weeks during the regular season, and you got to be at the top of your game. Maybe that wasn't the case against Northern Iowa. Maybe that wasn't the case against UTEP. So you take those out. You have 10 Saturdays where if you are not ready, I believe the way that Matt said it is you have to be ready physically, mentally, and emotionally. You have to be ready on all 3 of those levels. And if you're not, you're going to get beat. And in this league, we have seen that over the last couple of years. Ohio State losing to Purdue, Ohio State losing to Iowa, other major upsets affecting teams that were in the top 5 or the top 10. Oregon this year were world beaters right before the year started. They did not look good at all in the first 2 weeks. So that's why coaches like Matt Rhule say all this stuff. The schedule, it's all about this Saturday, or in the case of this week, this Friday. And that's not just coach speak. They believe it because, Chris, they have to believe it.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Rick Pizzo with us, Big Ten Network, Hail Varsity Radio, previewing Nebraska-Illinois Friday night. 400th consecutive sellout at Memorial Stadium, 2 ranked teams, and going to be just a great atmosphere. We need to keep the weatherman on the take, so the forecast is not going to be lightning delay filled, but time will tell with that. Rick will get you out here shortly. SC in Michigan. Usually that's been New Year's Day in Pasadena. How excited are you for this one?
Well, you got to figure out what Alex Orji is, the quarterback who will start for Michigan after the Davis-Warren experiment lasts exactly 2 games. This is also a show-me game for USC. We're talking about how different their defense is, how much better, how much more physical. Well, let's see it when you go to the Big House, because Michigan may not be the Michigan of last year, but they still have a lot of dudes. So if you're Dan Lynn's defense, this is your chance to come in and show that you can play defense good enough to put you in the conversation to be a Big Ten championship contender. I don't have any issues with USC's offense. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. Their special teams is going to be phenomenal with Zachariah Branch. Lincoln Riley calls as good a game as anybody that's a play caller in this country. To me, it's all about the defense, and this is a chance for them to show that. It's on the road, which is really, really tough. The best news for USC, they've had all sorts of time to get ready for it. Now they know about Orji. He doesn't necessarily scare you with his arm. This seems to be trending in the direction of USC. But again, you got to go out there and play on Saturday and see where the chips fall.
Rick, it's also going to be a loaded nightcap on Saturday night. Tons of fantastic games. Purdue at Oregon State, Michigan State at Boston College. You got Iowa at Minnesota, Northwestern at Washington, all in the primetime window on Saturday night. If you were giving advice out to a Husker fan, they can only have the TV on one of those games. Which game do you think they should be watching?
I'd probably go Michigan State, BC, right? You have Jonathan Smith's team at 3-0. BC just lost to Missouri, but it was a one-score game, had a chance to beat the Tigers. They're top 10 in the country. That's in Boston. BC's coach, Bill O'Brien, obviously was the guy who kind of kept that Penn State program together after the Joe Paterno scandal and then spent some time not just down in Alabama, but in the NFL as well. He's a great play caller. They have an unbelievably mobile, dynamic quarterback. But Michigan State is exactly where they want it to be. They're 3-0. They already have a conference win and a road conference win under their belt by going to Maryland in week 2 and getting a W. If Jonathan Smith takes this team on the road and beats a BC team that I think is one of the best in their conference, what a start that would be. And it would completely change the narrative of what we thought was possible for Michigan State in 2024.
Pretty deep and talented, the Big Ten, as you expand to 18, Rick. And you got some teams that weren't maybe talked a ton about in preseason that have a chance to break through. As we leave, Rutgers does what at Virginia Tech? What do you think of that?
You know, I like this trip because they also had a week off before they have to go on the road. Now, Virginia Tech is nasty. They're a different team than the Virginia Tech team that Rutgers beat a year ago because they have a different quarterback. Rutgers actually knocked the Tech quarterback out of that game, and his replacement came in, gave Virginia Tech a little bit of a boost, and then they played their best football throughout the rest of 2023. Now, he's now their starter this year. They have a dynamic, strong, physical running back and a really good offensive line. They're almost a mirror image of Rutgers in the sense that Rutgers wants to run the ball between the tackles, time of possession, play really good defense. This game should take about 2 hours and 45 minutes if it goes as scheduled. It comes down to Rutgers holding onto the football. If Ethan Kaliakmanis is able to make some plays without turning it over, I think the Scarlet Knights are 3-0. I said it before the year started. I thought this team would win a minimum of 8, if not 9 games this year. So if I'm sticking with that thought, then I got to pick Rutgers on the road this weekend in Blacksburg.
All right. Rick Pizzo with us, Big Ten Network. And Rick, thanks for previewing the conference, talking some Big Red in Illinois with us. We'll talk down the road. You take care.
My pleasure, boys. Be good. Enjoy the game on Friday night. I know I will.
Good stuff from Rick Pizzo. We love talking to Rick. He's been so gracious to us over the years between Big Ten Media Days and weekly hits, and it was just good to get his preview. A lot of good Big Ten football. Tiger Shark dives in, says Illinois does a lot of stunting and zone blitz. Communication's going to be key. Well, let's hear a little bit about that Illinois defense. Let's sneak in a little Marcus Satterfield. We'll do cut 13 here, and his take on that Illini D.
I think they're very talented. They got some guys on the back end that's played a lot of football. Their linebackers have played a lot of football. They got a very physical and lengthy, front five that they play with. It's going to be tough to move the line of scrimmage. So we got to be ready for a fist fight on Friday night when it comes in terms of running the football and trying to move the line of scrimmage. They're always going to have an extra hat in the box. They played a lot of man coverage. One of the things that that shows up is a little bit more zone this year than they played in the past. So it's something we've got to be ready for. But the scheme is excellent. The players are playing really well. They're taking the ball away. I think they're +9 turnover margin right now. So we have to come in ready for a fight. We got to be physical. We got to take care of the football.
Enjoyed Ty Robinson today. It's like, yeah, Rhule gave us a little bit of a breather on Monday, but it's back to Bloody Tuesday. Nicknaming your days of the week based on just how gladiator-esque it's going to be in practice, and it's how it's got to be, man.
I think Rhule's a U2 fan because they have Bloody Sunday.
Sure,
U2.
Well, they do.
That's obviously about a completely different thing, but
yes.
But
yeah.
Well, you wonder, is there any inspiration there? Calling
no,
it Bloody
you just
Tuesday?
Again, the goal is to make Saturday the easy part of the week.
I don't know. I guess Rhule kind of strikes me like he could be a U2 fan. And I like U2.
We'll have to ask him.
Yes, we will.
See, Rhule's not that much older than me.
Uh-huh.
And I liked U2 as far as my classic rock genre, but they're probably not top 5.
Joshua Tree. Great
it's
album. Incredible album.
No, it was great.
Where the Streets Have No Name keeps me coming back. Fantastic song.
Well, let's get off of music. The street is End Zone Drive. That is the hope if you're a Nebraska fan. And do you get there disguising coverages? Really, it was spelled out just a second ago, Elijah. Run the football, be able to run the football. But if you're in man coverage, can Nebraska's wideouts show up? Can they absolutely show up? But more on that coverage, and here's Sat with that secondary of Illinois.
It's impossible to figure out what they're like in coverage. It's all going to happen post-snap. They do an unbelievable job. I'm not going to get into the details, but there's certain things that you can usually do to get a certain type, like if it's a man coverage or a zone coverage. With these guys, you can't. They're older guys that they played a lot of football, so they can do a little bit more. But all the identification of coverages is going to have to happen after the ball snap, which is really hard.
Zero wideout, you think, and we'll get more into it as we get closer to Friday. Reminder, Single Barrel Thursday, 4 to 6 to get your football weekend kicked off. 9th and P, and then Friday ahead of Nebraska-Illinois. 4 to 6 at the Single Barrel. 9th and P, Real Red Reaction follows. And then we'll do the good old-fashioned weekend edition of Hail Varsity. Bright and early, 7:30-ish till 9 Saturday morning.
7:45.
7:45.
Is that okay?
Yeah, well, sure.
I guess we can do 7:30.
We'll just stay up. Just go.
You can come hang out with me, my apartment here in the studio.
That's right. Elijah's second home.
The literal studio apartment.
His summer home. What's Dylan Raiola think? We'll sneak in some number 15 in a little bit here as we wind down to Tuesday. Hail Varsity, we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out, spending time in the stream on the Hail Varsity Radio Network, and checking us out on Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Miss any part of the show? Check us out on the podcast page, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, the platforms. You can check out Hail Varsity Radio. Give us a review, good, bad, or ugly. We'll take the feedback. We appreciate it. And always like and subscribe. Hail Varsity YouTube, Hail Varsity Radio, Twitter at HVarsity Radio. Big thanks. Great stuff from Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Really appreciate Michael Bruntz with Husker 24/7 Sports. And the Big Ten Network's Rick Pizzo with us today. Tomorrow on the show, Mike Babcock, Babbers, back with us. Some thoughts on Nebraska-Illinois, the 400th sellout. We'll check in with Evan Bland from the Omaha World-Herald. Excited to check out our man Tim Brando, legendary Hall of Fame broadcaster. He is on the call for TV on Friday night for Fox. So Mr. B, Timmy B, going to join us, Tim Brando, in the 5 o'clock hour. Reminder to get buckled up. Driving is your full-time job. Phones, food, and friends need your attention when you're not driving. Stop the distraction. Just drive. A message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. I am god-awful at my Monday Night Football picks. So I was totally in on Buffalo, took Miami, was way off on Baltimore. They're 0-2. We'll get more into some NFL as the week goes forward. Chiefs, Cincy, we thought was going to be a good game. It was a good game. And then how that Atlanta has so many. It's a college all-star team of first-round top 10 picks. And Captain Kirk, dude, doing his thing. That final drive. Philly's a bit of a mess in close ball games.
You can confirm. What did I say to you after the show yesterday?
We know he should have put the house on Atlanta.
Yeah, I said it to you after the show. I said if we're both on Philly, that means bet the house on Atlanta. There's no chance we're both going to be right.
No.
And
because neither of us wanted Atlanta.
No, neither of us did.
I wanted Atlanta in 13.5. That's how bad I thought it was going to get.
Yeah, if we're both that adamant against a team, fade us. If you're a gambler out there, fade us, go against us. If we're both adamantly on a pick.
I think I did have a good college football weekend with my picks.
Did you have Wisconsin covering or no?
No.
See, I didn't. I had
Bama win by about 20, I think. Revisionist history here. I was right on LSU.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I almost nailed my Nebraska pick. So
yeah, you were good there.
I had 38-3 and it was 34-3.
Bo checks in. Last game I was at, Nebraska-Illinois, ugly uniform game. It's where Randy Gregory absolutely murdered somebody on that blindside block on an interception that was returned for a touchdown.
Do you know where I was that night?
In the crowd?
No, I was in a crowd. I was in the crowd of a marching band competition up in Omaha.
Ah.
Yeah, I didn't want to be there. Don't tell my marching band director that.
No, I would have faked an injury there.
I was streaming the game on my phone back then.
Ken says the last time I saw Nebraska was Frost led Nebraska at Illinois. That was bad football. Both sides hard to watch.
Is that also another Friday night game?
That was a Saturday.
Oh, no, I'm thinking the 45-42 game.
That shootout?
Yeah, that was not a hard watch.
All of Lovey's secondary decapitated Nebraska wide receivers, and Wandale said, "Why am I doing this?
Why am I playing running back?
Why am I getting murdered over the middle?
Why did I get 24 carries?"
That was right before Ohio State and game day came to town. Didn't end well. Back tomorrow at 4 with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. Thanks so much for checking us out. Talk to you tomorrow.